Welcome back to the Citizen channel for our third and final part of City Imports Deyna, where we've been looking at City's Polish international, of course, who was with us for about 27 months at Deyna. Last part we'd looked at, he fell out again with the hierarchy. He'd scored a goal and all of a sudden he was back in the reserves the week after. He turned up late for a reserve match, stuff like this. So it wasn't going great for our Polish international at this stage. I mean, this is the 79-80 season. And in the City Match magazine of versus Spurs on the 12th of January 1980, Alisson chipped in with this little comment. I'll read you the excerpt on Deyna, who was in the reserves at the time. He went on to say, just get that one. Deyna had a spell of scoring goals, but it must be admitted when all the Poles' assets and debits are taken into account, he's not really a front player. Now, this followed on from Tony Buck was saying that we wanted him, just to play as a front player and score goals. So that Alisson is now sort of counteracting that and saying something totally different. It's probably no wonder Deyna was a bit confused after all this, was it? He's a very calculated marksman, unerring when free around the box, but he never played up front in the illustrious days in Poland, always as the free midfield player. A change for him at this late stage of his career is not the ideal or solution. So I think that more or less says you haven't got long with us, mate. I think that's what he's trying to, Alisson is sort of saying in a roundabout way, not a roundabout way, because it's quite clear, isn't it? As I say, these problems are there, and the fact he kept being dropped back to the reserves was sort of saying a lot of that. And interestingly enough, the fans were frustrated as well. They didn't know what was happening behind the scenes at City. They saw Deyna in the reserves. They saw City struggling in the league, lacking goals, and of course. On the 1st of March in the Match magazine versus Norwich, in the postbag section, this was called Firing Line, Darren Gale, if you're out there, Darren Gale, you're still around, mate, of Rochdale, asked this question in the postbag. He said, why does Malcolm Alisson not play Deyna in view of the goal famine? Mr. Alisson says he is inconsistent, but City need his experience. He still has the best goal-scoring average of any City player. So, interesting question. And Alisson actually wrote his reply. Again, another interesting reply from Malcolm Alisson. Has had some personal problems. I think we've touched upon that in the first two parts. There's always something bubbling underneath the surface. And recently returned to Poland for a short spell where his wife had gone back before the birth of their second child. He is now back here, and a more peaceful state of mind has helped his football. I have always been saying that Kaziu would be capable of goals in any top company, but it was all a question of whether a team could afford the luxury of accommodating his type of play. Because there has been pressure on the side defensively, his attributes would have had limited chance. But of course, I acknowledge that we do need to score goals. By the time you read this, the reply, he will probably be in the team. So what was he? Was he in the team? Malcolm, was he in the team? For that match versus Norwich, where that postbag letter was actually printed, perhaps he kept it for a week or two until he knew he was going to be back in the team. He was actually substitute and actually did come on and replace an injured Tommy Booth in the 72nd minute of that game. So there you go. And the next game he started was as number 9 in a 2-0 loss at Liverpool. But Alisson did praise him. He said there was also some quality and skill on show from Deyna in midfield. So there you go. He's back in midfield where Alisson thinks he's best. He's not a striker. And he had a pretty good game. But defeats to Arsenal and away at United left City precariously sat 4th from the bottom. Things weren't going well on the pitch. Not particularly Deyna's fault, was it? We all know that. Deyna was injured against Arsenal, but had to limp on literally for about half of the game as we'd used our substitute already. Fortunately, he was fit for the bench. Yeah, there were injury problems for Deyna. I don't think it was as bad as people say at the time. I think it was more other problems, not particularly injuries. He seemed to recover quite quickly, and he did from this injury, and he was fit for the bench in the next match at home to Bolton Wanderers. He was back on the score sheet in a 1-1 home draw with Everton, and he featured in the last 7 league games at number 9. And Alisson complimented again in a way by saying that he, Chewett, and Reeves had a good understanding and had finally got on the same wavelength. So again, more positivity from Alisson, but we knew it wasn't we knew it wasn't going to last, of course. For the end of the season, the last day programme, the players were asked their opinions on how things had gone. So interesting, love. Let's have a quick look what it is on Casu Deyna, what his thoughts on that. There have been upsets for me this season, a personal one which caused me great concern. That's probably what Alisson was alluding to before. And also the problem not being able to take a regular place in the City side. But I'd like to stress that I am happy to be playing in the First Division. It is the ambition of many leading players in Poland to break into English football because all the players consider it to be such a high standard. It was no different. I have not changed my mind. Others from Poland have followed me, like Tadeusz Nowak, who is at Bolton, and Ryszard Kowanecki, or something like that, guys. Please forgive my pronunciation, who came this season to play for Oldham. I'm sure there will be others in future, encouraged that some have tried before. The past season has been a little trying for me because my wife, Mariola, was ill at the height of the winter months and had to return to Poland for hospital treatment. It meant that I was a full-time professional football and also a full-time housewife, looking after my son Norbert, taking him to school and doing the cooking. It was also very morning I was thankful to the club that they gave me a short break during the most difficult days. Now my wife has recovered and is back in this country. A terrific weight has been lifted from my mind. My shoulders feel lighter as the worry has gone. You can forget all about the rumours that I want to leave City. I want to stay here and complete my 3-year contract, which does not expire until November 1981. I'm sure I can still prove a value. I feel that City have got a good blend of youth and experience that is now beginning to reap dividends. Now that we're safe in the First Division, I can only see bright days ahead, and I'm already looking forward to a new season, completely free of worries, I hope. So there you go, obviously proof from his own lips, of his own words, of the problems he had with City, certainly over that last season, and certainly things bubbling underneath. And we did say there was perhaps an alcohol problem, but who could blame the guy with obviously in a strange country without his family around him? He was City's star man that season on 4 occasions, so he didn't do too bad. Only 3 City players better that. Corrigan with 8, Bennett with 5, and Ransom with 5. We finished 7 points above the drop zone, so we survived, but it had not been a good season. Deyna was positive, though was, of course, as we can see from that little excerpt there, as we approach what will be an interesting 80-81 season for us, not in a good way perhaps, or perhaps in a good way, good ways and bad ways, but not so much for, of course, Casu Deyna. It started okay for him. He was at the centre of attention as City played that second game, that return friendly with his old team, Legia Warsaw, at Main Road on August the 12th. I was at that one that season. But sadly, Deyna's season never really got going. He started a paltry 2 games and one as a sub as well. So it never really kicked on that season, despite his optimism in those excerpts from the season before. His last first team appearance in front of the Main Road crowd and me was at home to Stoke on the 20th of September 1980, a 2-1 defeat, sadly. And his last first team game was a disappointing 3-1 loss away at West Brom on the 11th of October 1980. With City rock bottom, a change in manager as Alisson went and John Bond came in. It hadn't helped Deyna's cause, of course, and within 2 weeks of John Bond taking over, was the hope for Deyna getting a chance? Probably not, because he knew exactly where he stood with the new boss. As let's face it, Bond never beat about the bush with his comments, told him that he wasn't in his plans and that he could seek a future elsewhere. So in the meantime, he was stuck in the reserves, doing okay as well. We'll do his stats in a moment, but he was in the meantime, he was in the Central League. But fortunately, he didn't have to wait long. There was good news in December as a move to the US appeared on the cards, which was a good move for Casu Deyna. I think he would look forward to that. San Diego Sockers, there you go, San Diego Sockers. But as their season didn't start till the following March, they didn't seem to appear, and there's a bit of whinging in the city camp about any hurry to pay an agreed fee. Obviously, the delay it as long as possible, and it was finally decided that we move at the end of January, 27 months, of course, after he'd arrived at City. Bondi commented that the move will be great for him. He said he deserves to be remembered for the best of his talents and not for the unfortunate excursion he made into the Football League. Just a bit like, as I say, it's like John Bond to call a spade, but I think that's a little bit, just slightly over the top. He did make a little bit of an impact, and the fans did see the best of him. So not quite correct from John Bond, in my opinion. He'd played 14 games for reserves that season, scoring 13 goals. So he still had that ability. And the reserve team did well in the league, the Central League there as well. In total for City, first team, he'd played 38 and played 5 as sub and scored 13 goals. So not a bad return. He loved his time when he went over to San Diego. All credit to him. He played until 1987, so he played both outdoor and indoor for the San Diego Sockers, and he was almost 40 by the time he managed to hang up his boots, scoring over 160 goals in around 260 games outdoor and indoor in America. So that wasn't too bad, was it? Brian Kidd summed up this classy player, Casu. He said, the lad was iconic, he was sublime, so elegant, such an excellent manipulator of the ball. He had so much guile and sophistication. People talk about the technique of the influx of foreign players these days. Kazi was way up there. He certainly was. And who can forget? Yes, how can we forget? We can't leave this little feature on Casu without his part, of course, in the classic classic wartime film. Well, it wasn't a war film, was it? But wartime football movie, of course, Escape to Victory, alongside our own buzzer, of course, and other wonderful players like Pelly and Bobby Moore, and that great goalkeeper, Sylvester Stallone. Yeah, okay. And yeah, as City fans, we were chuffed because even though he'd only spent over 2 years with us, it was like one of our players being in a Hollywood movie. It was absolutely fantastic. Alongside Buzzer, we were just as chuffed for Deyna as we were Buzzer, obviously, even though we had the longer links with Buzzer. So yeah, it was considered one of our own, Casu Deyna, and the fact he was in that film, it was when we didn't have much to brag about, it was something to mention and be happy about, in all fairness, wasn't it? So there you go. I think Bond's comments were unkind. We'll go back to that. I think he came to City, not our greatest period, guys, was it? Let's be honest. The fans took to him. The fans loved him. He was always 100%. And perhaps in a more settled team at the time, he would have done so much better. Perhaps the rough and tumble of the English game wasn't perhaps to his style, but there's no doubt Tony Buck never quite knew how to get the best of his midfield calmness, and that's what it was. He could score goal. Someone said he moved like he was in slow motion and did things in slow motion in a good way, not in a bad way. And Tony Buck never quite knew how to sort of harness that, and Alisson certainly didn't appear to want to harness that when he came. Of course, and he could score goals. Let's face it, for Alisson, it wasn't one of his boys, was it? He wasn't one of his guys, so that made a big influence on Alisson and what Alisson did. And John Bond didn't fancy him, simple as that. So, but we know what John Bond's attitude was and the sort of players he wanted in his side as well, which Deyna didn't fulfil that category, did he? And let's be honest, he did have personal problems. I think that we've hinted at it in this. He had a few personal problems, so I'm so happy that he went over to America and did very, very well and would have enjoyed the quality of life over there. But as I say, he didn't let us down. They say even though he got mixed reviews from City management, he was certainly a favourite for us City fans, and most of us still remember him fondly. Perhaps we should have stumped up, some say, for our Diles and Villa, and who knows what may have been. But personally, for me and many other City fans, it was a privilege just to watch Casu Deyna play. Well, not against England, obviously. We'll glance over that one, of course. Sadly, Deyna died in a car accident in San Diego, California, aged just 41. So only just over a year after he retired from playing football. And on the September the 1st, 1989, in 1994, he was chosen by the Polish Football Association, PZPN, and the readers of all Polish sports-related newspapers as the greatest Polish football player of all time. His number 10 was retired by Legia Warsaw. And yes, in fact, it was actually retired by San Diego as well. Obviously no longer with us as a team, but they retired his shirt as well. Casu Deyna. Yep. One of the first or most probably standout City imports. legend for us, I think, in a very small way for us who watched him and enjoyed his skill. And he was a legend in world football, not just a sort of mini legend for us. Rest in peace, Blue. That's all we can say, isn't it, about Deyna? Anyway, thanks for joining for this little 3-part series. City and Port's Deyna. Hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in your comments any of your personal memories. Anyway, please, until we meet again, guys, just I only ask one thing, don't I? Please stay safe, Blues. Come on, City. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.